Jet about $1, hell yes, I'm a problem failed test. It's only getting worse. I swear I'm getting money, I just hope you getting yours. I'm killing solo, so you know I'm getting more. Now that young Gambino on the course. Go.
Hello, what's going on, everybody, once again? And this is one of those things where all good things must come to an end, if you know what I mean. Another episode of the A-League. Of course, we're recording after the last two episodes of the Jordan documentary. So we're going to get a lot into that. But first, just wanted to check in on, of course, Rashad, how we doing? How's everything?
Man, it's, it was something I think probably, I guess, like the month marking, it felt weird and, it's becoming kind of challenging or whatever to my mental. Now it's like, like they said, the new normal, like I'm used to it. I'm pretty chill now. I've accepted, what's going on right now. So that's where I'm at right now. How you feeling, King?
Oh, I'm pretty good. And like you said, I've sort of adjusted to it as well. Because I think it was one of those issues where in the beginning it was this, the whole quarantine period, it was a lot to adjust to. But I think slowly but surely, I think that what we've done is that we sort of found ways to adjust to it and to adapt to it. And eventually we know things are gonna start opening back up, and they are opening back up in some places, even though like you were saying before we started recording, you said that some of it, like you ain't trusting. I ain't really trusting it either, but I think that it really is something I feel like we found ways to adjust to it. We sort of found ways to adapt to it, and it really is a matter of making lemonade out of lemons. And that's what that's just really what we've done. That's what I love about this. Well, not love, but what is so admirable about this whole thing.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see the amount of people, which kind of seems like the majority of them, that just decided, I'm bored now, I'm going to go back outside.
Cabin fever.
I think that's exactly. I think that's exactly what we're seeing right now. It's just a bunch of cabin fever at large, especially in America. And but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely cabin fever for sure, because it's one of those issues where I think that especially during the summertime, like if it was during winter, I think like okay, like because it would be like 20 degrees or 10 degrees or whatever, especially up north, they'd be like, I ain't going out in this. But I think people are starting to feel themselves a little bit and think like, oh wow, it's starting to heat up again. We're not getting a polar vortex anymore. So it's not, even though they were saying, like I think 2 weeks ago, about how it was snowing up in New York and snowing up in New England in the Northeast. But yeah, I think that's something that people are doing somewhat to a certain extent. But yeah, it's still one of those crazy things, man. It's still one of those crazy things.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and before we get into a convo about the Jordan doc, and also we're going to talk a little bit more about the Versus deal. I actually have some news of my own. So in addition to writing for Beyond the W, I've now started writing actually for another website. It's called Preps Network, and I've actually dropped a couple of things about some of their like South Carolina athletes. So yeah, that's I'm sort of now kind of pulling double duty, sort of doing contributions for them. So yeah, whenever you get the chance, check those out.
Hey man, gotta give it up, King. Hey, the way that Zoom works, if you clap or whatever, or you say something when someone else is saying something, it overlaps.
Uh-huh.
So I had to make sure that he finished the announcement. We give it up for King, man. I'm proud of you, man. Congratulations.
It is what it is,
it's a very difficult time for people. How many people getting new gigs, new side hustles, all that in this time, especially in our industry. So, that's definitely a blessing, definitely something big, I'm saying. Proud, I'm saying. I was thinking about you earlier, and the effect that you've had on my career. For y'all that don't know, I didn't know we were going in this personal side of things or whatever before we get into the last dance. But I've been doing these reactions on my YouTube channel recently,
Uh-huh.
and really that all started pretty much kind of because of you, like, and
Uh-huh.
it's all a long string of things. I'll explain like this as quick as I can. So I transferred to Georgia State, and I, sitting outside one of my morning classes, there's this kid sitting with the San Francisco Giants hat. So I talked to him about sports. He says he loves sports, all that. We become
Uh-huh.
friends. That guy's Jared Oliver. Jared Oliver puts me on with Prime Time and
Uh-huh.
at Georgia State, and he's also working at the Signal, the student newspaper. So he's always talking about how his sports editor Keem Balin's working so hard and this and that, and he's always spoke highly of Keem. Keem
Mm.
graduates. They need a sports editor. He recommends me to do it since I had experience at Valdos's paper, and then also just because I know Georgia State sports from doing prime time. So I applied for the position and I get it. I'm Akeem's successor. One of Akeem's last days on the job, he's cleaning out his desk at the office and he's walking out and I'm like walking in. And so we talk for a minute and I'm like, Akeem, what are some of the tips you have for me? And he says, cover Olympic sports. He's like, treat each sport equally and everything like that. People will overlook a sport like volleyball or something like that, or track and field. So I'm like, all right. So volleyball season comes around and Jared does a preseason volleyball story on a player. And I'm like, okay, so I check out a volleyball game and I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. And I found out that year that I really like the sport of volleyball. Fast forward, I've always covered volleyball. I've always kind of made it a priority with me. I get the job in Alabama. I'm covering volleyball over there. And one of the teams, Point University, the small NAIA school, I'm going to their volleyball because I just enjoy watching them because they were pretty good. And, I was there for 2 years, 2 seasons. So first season, I'm starting to develop those relationships and stuff with the best players that I'm interviewing on a regular basis. One of those players, her name is Julia Felix. Fast forward to last season, I'm at a game. A kid is in the stands, dude back in his 20s or something like that. He has on the Devin Booker jersey. I come up to him during the volleyball match that I'm covering because Akeem told me to cover volleyball a few years ago. And it turns out this guy, he edits highlights for like YouTube channels. So he used to do it for Frankie Vision, which is like a big, YouTube channel or whatever in the highlights space. And but now he's doing it for Swish. So that's where I met my boy Rob, who was Julia's boyfriend. Long story short, fast forward to today, I'm reacting on my YouTube channel to Rob's highlights that I met at a volleyball match. I never would have met this guy if it wasn't for Akeem telling me to cover volleyball 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing the things that, just because sometimes I feel like that those sports like the volleyballs and even even softball, track and field, and even to a certain extent baseball I feel like at the college level and even at the high school level, I feel like the sports like that kind of get overlooked because typically, football, basketball. And of course, those are like the main sports. But, one of the things that I had gone into, during my time as sports editor at the Signal, one of the things that I had always tried to keep in mind was there's only so much football and basketball you could fit into a school newspaper. And at Georgia State, at the time that I was sports editor, the football team, in all honesty and truth, wasn't much to speak of. So I was, kind of thinking like, okay, like we because the year I was sports editor, I had, I was of course going to all the games and they was playing at the Georgia Dome. The first game me and Jeremy both covered. I was covering a lot of the other games afterward, but the first game that I was sports editor at the Signal, Georgia State played Abilene Christian, and if I remember correctly, GSU won 38-37. That turned out to be the only game they won that season. So it was one of those things where, we were still like, trying to fit in football content, obviously, but we knew that the pièce de résistance of the football of the sports season, trying to get my French up, obviously, for when eventually I visit Quebec. But the main attraction of the season was going to be the basketball team. So it was one of those things I was thinking, like, there's only so much content we could get. So, that's when I started brainstorming ideas for, to feature volleyball players, brainstorming ideas to feature softball players, brainstorming ideas to feature, players from other sports. And as anybody who probably knows me, I'm also very cool with Georgia State's volleyball coach. So it's one of those things where I was just thinking, like, there's only so much content we could get. Let's see if we can kind of get some of the other sports in there. And then once we really start ramping up things for basketball season, then, then we're going to go all in with that. But one of the reasons as to why I told you 5 years ago was because I felt like I wanted it to be something where I felt like it would prepare us, both of us, better for how it was going to be, like, when eventually we graduate, because more than likely our first jobs were going to be in like these small towns, where we cover like a whole variety of sports. And, like you said, you eventually went to Alabama. I was covering sports in Concord, North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. And that was the scenario for both of us. So it's amazing how a few little words and one little compliment can sometimes go a long way, man.
Yeah, man, definitely. And, the fact that I didn't even know I would enjoy volleyball until I gave it a chance. And now volleyball is like one of my favorite sports to watch. What I'm saying? Like, it's kind of like, I guess you would say, like, a lot of times in a lot of cases, I would enjoy watching volleyball over some football games because, like, especially in the South, we're so oversaturated with football. It's football all the time. A lot of times in the Southeast. Exactly. Sometimes in the fall, I like that little break with volleyball to see something different in an indoor sport and stuff like that. But something I want to ask you, I know we're supposed to get into the last dance, but this is something you can only get here at A-League. This is deep Georgia State talk. Like you say, you work cool with Sally Paul Hamas and stuff like that. Just, I remember when we went back to watch a volleyball game, a couple of years after doing an A-League episode in Atlanta, we went to a game. And after the game, you came on the court and you talked to her, and y'all talked for a few minutes after the match. Just how did that whole relationship kind of develop with you and her? And how would you describe that kind of connection that you had?
It's great. Like, it's great. Like I go to, it's one of those things where I will occasionally, whenever my schedule is, it opens up, I'll go to volleyball games, and I'll, say hi to her and, everything like that. And, we'll be, talking about how things, going. Of course, I'll be asking how things going with her. She'll be asking how things are going with me. And I'll pretty much tell her, like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and the third. So, it was amazing because, it was one of those things where it kind of started when I was sports editor, because the year that I became sports editor was actually, if I remember correctly, her first year as volleyball coach at State. And what's so interesting was that one of my first things that our editor in chief at the Signal, Anna Yang, me and her were working on, as well as Jeremy. One of the first things we was working on was we had to do like a 12-page preview issue for the football team. And I was like, oh, shoot, how are we going to do a 12-page preview issue for the football team when we only have 2 writers? Because at the time it was only me and Jeremy, because the previous sports editor before me, Alec McQuaid, he got an internship and is not working, if I remember correctly, at 11 Alive. So I was thinking, like, how are we going to get all this, like, together? But, little by little, we pieced everything together. We got everything done. But at the same time that we was brainstorming all of these ideas for the preview issue for the football team, I was kind of thinking, like, okay, we're doing all this for the football team. Okay, let me see if there's something else that I could potentially work on as far as doing a preview for the volleyball team as well. So more and more and more, when I started thinking, like, I was starting to think, like, okay, let me go ahead and do this. So I was like, okay, let me get everything together and everything like that. And when I did the preview issue for the volleyball team, it was amazing because when I look back at that issue, it was kind of half preview volleyball team, half feature on the coach. So that was, and I think that overall was one of my better writings that I did at the Signal. It was like 1,600 words plus, but I think it was one of my better features because I talked with her, I talked with a couple of the players, and I went to just about every single volleyball game. And what's so crazy is what I was actually hoping that I was going to do that season, because I think, if I remember correctly, it was one of those things where I was actually planning on going to cover their game in the Sun Belt Volleyball Tournament, which was in San Marcos, Texas that season. I didn't get to go, but I was, if it was one of those things where I had the means at the time, I would have definitely gone to that volleyball game, even though Georgia State was eliminated in the first round of that tournament. So ever since then, it's been pretty cool, and I think it's one of those things where I think that was definitely a highlight of my time there, because, like I said, it's sort of easy to kind of overlook the Olympic sports, but I feel like that it all goes back to the idea of, they deserve a shine too. And there's really only so much, content you could get out of football and basketball, especially when it was one of those things where, as we know, like I said, football at the time was better not spoken of around the Georgia State campus.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of my soliloquy.
but yeah, like you said, I think, without that, like, that's a very pivotal part of both of our careers, just helping us for the future. And, like, had no idea, just that stumbling of, I guess. So shout out to Georgia State football's mediocrity in 2015.
They on the come up. They definitely.
Nah. It's a whole different story now. They have their whole program going. Shout out Sean Elliott. Shout out Trent Miles. Even he's still sending kids to the NFL from Georgia State. Penny Hart.
Shout out Dan Ellington.
Exactly. Dan Ellington is Sean's guy. But
right.
He's a JUCO guy. Yeah. So,
and now he's an assistant coach now.
Yeah. Shout out to Dan Ellington, arguably the greatest player in program history.
Panther football now has their own coach, Dan.
Yeah. Exactly. But let me think. I want to see if I'm ready to move on into the Last Dance. Are you ready to move on into the Last Dance, Shaquem?
Whenever you are.
All right, so I guess now's the time. We'll go ahead and move into it. Final night, as Akeem said, man. First of all, just how do you feel about this thing ending, man?
Well, like I said in the intro, I mean, it was one of those things where all good things come to an end ultimately. But there was so much that you could take from those last two episodes, like the story about Steve Kerr. I mean, that was definitely a tearjerker and everything, and it really, I believe, highlighted exactly why he's so passionate about the issues that he's passionate about. Because Steve Kerr is one of those that is always, sort of like Greg Popovich. Steve Kerr is always one of those coaches that is, very outspoken on his Twitter account, is very outspoken about justice issues and everything. So it really, I believe, just opened my eyes into just exactly, why he is the way he is, and, why he's so respected and beloved around the not just the NBA community, but also around the sports community. So that was something that really stuck out to me. And something else that really stuck out to me.
Wait, hold on, Keem. Before you get to the next point, I just want to interject on that Steve Kerr point. Elizabeth Williams, descendant from the Atlanta Dream, tweeted during the episode, and y'all respond to him. The comments always say "stick to basketball" whenever Steve Kerr tweets about something political. And she is like, and that's what y'all want to do. So I don't know. I just thought that was a very powerful post from Elizabeth. Shout out to Elizabeth. Shout out to the Dream.
Oh yeah, absolutely, sure. But yeah, that was something. And then something else that I also saw that really caught my eye was, you know, there are very few cities that know how to celebrate a sports championship like Chicago. Like them rallies at Grant Park. Oh man, you want to talk about a sea of red, because it's one of those issues where, when a city wins a championship, it's a big thing. But what I what when the Bulls had those rallies in Grant Park in Chicago after they won those championships, it reminded me of when the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup. And it especially reminded me of when the Cubs won the World Series. Like Chi-Town know how to do it big. They know how to do it big for their teams. They put home for their teams. But I'm just gonna call out Chicago when the Sky win a WNBA championship and when the Chicago Fire win in the MLS. Bring that same energy. Just calling you out, Chicago. Just calling you out. But yeah, they know how to celebrate for sure. And there was just, like I said, there was just so much that that came from those from those episodes. But I think that one of the things that I think more so than anything else that really really hit me was at the very end of the documentary when they was mentioning what has happened to the Bulls ever since, like Jordan retiring and then later on coming back for 1 year with Washington, and Phil eventually going to LA to coach Shaq and Kobe. And it mentions the fact that the Bulls began their rebuild. The Bulls have been rebuilding every single day ever since.
Hey, all right. So I want to give the Bulls their credit, because everybody want to jump on them for that, because they look at those years directly after, and then they look at now. No, they had about 5 years where they were one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference, with D Rose and Boozer and Taj Gibson and Joakim Noah, Luol Deng, Kirk Heinrich. Those dudes were in the thick of it in the Eastern Conference. I just want to give them that shout out there. You can't discredit what they accomplished from 09 to 13. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the Bulls for that. But yeah, man, I mean, I think it just shows you how serious this stuff is, bro. And, like to end it with that clip of Jordan talking, I think right after he was drafted, and he said, it's funny how just one spark of a fire can change an entire franchise, a crappy franchise, into one of the biggest dynasties in NBA history. He said he wanted those guys to be up there with Philadelphia. He said he wanted those guys to be up there with LA and Boston. And that's what he did. It's crazy to I think that was a great way to end it, to just show how serious that is. And then, obviously when you think about that today, think about guys like LeBron, and, it used to just be LeBron. Now it's LeBron and Kawhi, because Kawhi, goes to a borderline finals team and pushes them to, championship level. And you talk about Chicago's parades. That Toronto parade last year might be the greatest parade in the history of sports, because they had an entire country come out there to support those guys. So, yeah, man. But yeah, those were the main things that I took away from it as well. And also just the there was a couple of things that I should have took notes. But Wally Blaze, shout out to Wally Blaze, former Hawk trainer, a long time Hawk. He trained the Hawks for a long time. Had a big part in the documentary tonight. And the Dennis Rodman thing, man, going to wrestling in the middle of the NBA finals and missing practice, that is crazy to me. And then
that's vintage Rodman, though.
Yeah, and then they had to sneak him out so the media didn't get him, and the media member saw him and he ran up to That was funny. I can't even imagine that happening today, man. I wanted to text my guy from Hawks PR at the time and just send him a bunch of laughing emojis like, can you imagine? But I didn't want to bother him. I ain't texted him in months, so I didn't want to hit him back up with that, because, I could definitely see them doing that. I had a situation in December where I wanted 2 players from the Hawks, 2 specific players, and based off the players, PR asked me, what do you want to do with these guys, man? And I was like, just ask them about, I ain't going to talk about, this part, the obvious part that everybody going to talk about them for.
Yeah.
All right. And he was like, so-and-so said he didn't want to do it. One half of them didn't want to do it. The other half, he getting ready. He in the back. They're like, oh man, Rashad, I'm sorry, man. He just getting ready for a long time. I waited there for like an hour. I had to go back to Mississippi this night. So I'm just like, dude, hurry up, man. So I think I gave it like 15 more minutes and he never came out. They're like, sorry, Rashad. And I'm walking out and I'm like, it's all right, guys. I think I like put on back my hoodie and whatnot in the parking lot. Texted my friends and let them know I was about to hit the road. Revved up the car, get to the red light, and a car pulls up next to me and they have a license plate from their previous team state. And the windows are so tinted, you can't really see who it is. But based off of that and the person who I was waiting for, I was like, that's him right there.
Oh, man.
And he was just waiting for me to leave, man. And I was there for like an hour, man. An hour. Everybody else was gone. I'm just standing there for an hour. And so, yeah, that's the closest thing that I could. But it was nowhere near Dennis Rodman running out, like physically running and everything, trying to hide from me. But, yeah.
Because Rodman was an internationally known celebrity. Like, I mean, he was. I mean, we a few episodes they went into detail about how Dennis Rodman was. You know, he literally had to be pulled back into I guess practice or game by Michael Jordan because he was having a little bit too much fun with Carmen Electra, and he was in Vegas. So this is, like I said, for him to go into wrestling and for him to be like, with Hogan and all of them, like that was so on brand for Dennis Rodman like that then, because dude was all over the place.
And it's funny you say was, because 2020, here we are, 20-something years later, and he's not even apologetic. He's like, man, I just wanted to do me, man. I just wanted to do all the doll, bleep the bleep. I just wanted they ain't let me do me. Phil, the only one that let me do me. I'm like, dude, like 20-some years later, you would think he'd be like, man, I was just running wild, man. Like they had
at least he's honest.
I don't know how they had the patience for me. He was non-apologetic about the way he was, man. Where did Rodman go after the Bulls? Because I know he was, who he's with before the Bulls. He was with the Lakers for a little bit, I believe, in the 90s. In Detroit. I don't know who he was with after that.
I forgot. You mean Rodman?
Yeah, Rodman. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot who he was with. Who he was with after that, and I think that it's one of those issues where I think a lot of people have probably forgot who he was with too, because so many people I think remember him, with those Bulls teams, that it's almost like if he played for somebody else for the rest of his career is almost it was almost irrelevant. I'm looking him up right now. It says he played with the Lakers and the Mavs, and he played a lot of looks like he played a lot of overseas basketball. It says he even played for a team in Tijuana. He played for a team in Tijuana.
That man, Dennis Rodman, something else, man. That's something that you're not gonna see these days and stuff like that. But speaking of something you're not gonna see these days, one part of the doc that made me feel old at this part in the later 90s, the latter part of Jordan's career, it's like the guys he was facing. I remember their last seasons. I remember them playing, like in live time, real time. Like I remember John Stockton. I remember Reggie Miller. And when I saw those guys and like the quality of the film of those games against the Bulls, I'm like, man, I'm kind of old. And I think that's how like a lot of these kids today are gonna feel when they see docs with, maybe LeBron playing Vince Carter in the 07 playoffs when he was on the Nets, and LeBron's early stages of his career and stuff like that. Kids are gonna be like, man, I remember seeing Vince Carter play.
Right. And at least they'll actually be able to remember, like they say, like, oh, they saw Vince Carter play, because they may have seen him play, but he wasn't like at his peak when he was dunking on dudes when he was in Toronto.
But Reggie Miller, man, he was still like shooting in 03, 04, 05. Stockton wasn't what he was, in 02 when he retired. But I remember Reggie. Reggie was still pretty good, man. I think that last year, like he might have slowed down a step, and his career kind of ended with Tayshaun Prince blocking his shot in the playoffs. But
in 04.
Yeah, exactly. See, I remember that clear as day, which just makes me feel like, dang, like, yeah, we older
Yeah.
now.
2004 when that was 2004 when that happened. And what's so amazing is that after everybody on Chicago had retired, Indiana, like you said, was still pretty good, and Indiana was really good around that time. I think that I remember correctly, Indiana actually got to an NBA Finals
Yeah, yeah.
against the Lakers, but
I
of
think that
course
was
they
the
didn't
Lakers'
lost
first
a
one.
lot.
That was the Lakers' first one.
Right.
Yep, yep.
Because the first one was against Indiana, the second was Philly, and then the third was
New
New
Jersey.
Jersey.
Yeah, exactly. And
Mhm.
and the Bulls beat New Jersey in the first round that year, '98.
Right.
Yep.
Hmm.
So they beat New Jersey, and then I don't know who they played the second round. I don't think they told us.
Yeah, I don't know if they went into that.
They skipped the second round unless they played Charlotte in the second round, and then Indiana. Wow. Now I want to know who they played in the second round. And then Indiana in the conference final. So two of the kind of the Eastern Conference successors
Mhm.
are teams that they beat in the '98 playoffs leading up to it. And and then I think that's around the time Houston tried to think with Barkley and Clyde Drexler, and I think Drexler actually got to with Houston in the mid '90s when Jordan went to play baseball. But
Mhm.
it was funny. That was kind of like the first ring chase team out of all those teams. Anyways, I brought that up with
Yeah.
Stockton and Reggie Miller was because like those great players played on those teams. When it said Reggie Miller's name in the bottom, it's like Pacers guard 1987 to 2005.
Mm.
I'm like,
Wow.
wow. You
Longevity.
know what I'm saying? Like, that just sounds like incredible. Like, Kobe played for the Lakers. He had that big, trade request thing and everything like that in '06, '07, when the Lakers were really bad. But
Uh-huh.
he played for the Lakers for 20 years, man. And I
Yeah.
think, if I don't know about them, but I know when I saw that, if I'm a player like Giannis and I was on the fence, if I was like all loyalty, but then, I was starting to get on the fence because the Warriors rumors were heating up so much and, like the temptation is there to go so bad. And then
Mhm.
say I'm a Trey Young or I'm a Luka Doncic, uh, even if I'm Anthony Davis in retrospect, if I'm looking at
Mhm.
that, I want to stay with my team that, that has associated, what I'm saying, that has branded me as their city. I want to win that city a championship.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And, I think that a lot of that has to do with the relationship that a player like really cultivates with a city. Or, because a lot, it's different with LeBron, of course, because he grew up in, Akron, Ohio, in the Cleveland area. But but I see absolutely what you mean. Like, if it's about, that loyalty aspect, then I definitely want to win a championship for that city. The same thing could be said for Tim Duncan because he won all them championships in San Antonio and he played his entire career with one team. People kind of sleep on Tim Duncan as an all-time great NBA player because he was what they call him the big fundamental and everything, but but he was an all-time great, definitely for sure, and played his entire career with one team. That is a rarity nowadays, and with how crazy free agency is nowadays, you kind of wonder if it's going to be something where we could even see that again. And it's also a good point you brought up about the Kobe bit, because when the Lakers had their big, breakup after the '04 finals, when they got their doors blown off by the Detroit Pistons, one of the things that I remember that they was talking about was not only Shaq going to Miami and Phil leaving and everybody that left. There was also a lot of talk that maybe Kobe was even going to play for the LA Clippers. So
Yeah,
there was a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
speculation around that time that he may play in the same building, but with the other team.
And Jerry West is the one who doubted that, who deaded that.
Yeah.
What he didn't tell us. He didn't tell us until he passed, which was
Mm-hmm.
that's tough. It's a tough part of 2020 that you try to forget. But I was watching Kobe doing work today earlier, and looking at Tim Duncan, and Kobe was like, Tim, what can you say? The greatest power forward of all time, and you
Mm-hmm.
know Tim and Cole, they were two guys that I had originally on my list, tied at number 5 for all time. And now it's kind of like I'm leaning more towards, just Duncan ahead of Kobe one spot. Duncan at 5, Kobe at 6. And that's always kind of, just kind of been my list or whatnot. So, yeah, definitely I agree with what you said about Tim, and then Dirk as well. Dirk is another guy who, 18 plus years on the same organization, bring them a championship. Didn't leave when things got tough. Brought help with them, with Jason Kidd and Terry, thanks to the Hawks. Yeah, all that stuff. And Marion, Tyson Chandler. So
Desanya Jop.
Exactly. Jop. My boy Jop, man. Shout out to Jop.
Right.
Jop. He was I think like Issa Rae's like last name is Jop or something like that. And then 'cause I was reading her book a couple years ago. That was one of the last books I read. And and like when I saw the last name, I was like, Jop like the basketball player? Are they related? And then anyways. So so that's what we got out the Last Dance, man. It's so sad that it's come to an end, but we're gonna have other sports docs coming in the near future. I'll wonder if ESPN's gonna move up the other docs. We'll see what happens with that. But let's move into the verses, man. We're about so and so in, so we're gonna move to verses. Nelly versus Luda. Of course, I've been keeping a track from afar of all the versus battles. I think probably the most entertaining, the most intriguing matchup to me so far, being a younger guy, was T-Pain and Lil Jon. That was definitely the one that was probably most intriguing to me before this week. And then, all the old school ones with all the, that's great and stuff. And the Teddy Riley memes are great. But this one with Nelly and Luda, there's definitely an era that I lived through, like in real time. And I knew all those songs. Jill Scott and Erykah Badu as well. But, like hip hop, it's obviously got that kind of rock for the men. You know what I'm saying? The men.
Of course.
So I was definitely hyped for it and everything. And I felt like I was 8 years old again just watching that battle. But first, before we get into the specifics of it, Keem, how did you feel about the battle?
First of all, what I was kind of thinking, especially putting it into the perspective of what we just saw tonight, I'm just kind of thinking, who took a bigger L this weekend? Nelly's Wi-Fi or pizza joints in Utah? Because both pizza joints in Utah and Nelly's Wi-Fi took major L's. But,
are you buying that story though?
I mean, I slick am not buying the story. I slick am, but I slick not. But I feel like at the same time, like even though I may not necessarily be buying that story, lots of people I believe are going to be buying that story
for sure.
Yeah, for sure about the quote unquote food poisoning. And I even saw Shanae Agwumake tweet like, "Oh wow, like this is going to be an excuse for my older sister Nneka to not go into delivery." Oh, and shout out to DiGiorno, by the way, brilliant tweet. Delivery pizza, go figure. Brilliant by social media people. But yeah, I was thinking the same thing about the versus battle, the same exact thing that you was thinking, like we really because everything that they played, all this was stuff that I was, like you said, I was vibing to when I was in middle school. And I was like, oh shoot, like we talking about these people like they legends. We talking about like Nelly and Luda like legends of the game. And I'm just like, oh shoot, like y'all really trying to turn us into old heads, aren't you? But I felt like I was going back to my days at Hamilton Middle School in upper northwest Houston when I was living in Texas at the time. So yeah, that really brought me back. That really, nostalgia was on 100. I was on 100 like Saturday night.
I was really missing my Wizards Jordan jersey, man. That time.
My
Wizards jersey. I wish I could have brought it out. Shout out to everybody back home, man. I'll be back soon. But yeah, but yeah, man, that was just a great battle of nostalgia and everything. And speaking of old heads, I see that tweet circulate every now and then, like imagining busting out the swag surf and then having a young kid saying, "Okay, old school." And it's getting to that point with those jokes, man. It's getting to that point, it's a part of life. And it beats the ladder. Getting older beats the ladder. But yeah,
Right.
man, Luda skunked Nelly. Nelly
Yeah.
had a couple tracks I didn't know he did that he played in like the bonus round, like the Rick Ross record. I didn't know Nelly was on that record, and I was like, why didn't
Yeah.
you play this in your 20, man? This is way better than a couple of the tracks you played that nobody knew. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? And Luda was going all
Oh
commercial,
yeah.
20 hits, features, remixes, and all that. He going for the biggest hits, and yeah, Luda
Yeah.
blew him out the building, but it was definitely with Nelly's Wi-Fi. It was definitely entertaining to watch.
Yeah, exactly. Because I felt, and plus I felt like when you look at both of their careers, like both of them like had great careers, but Luda just had a lot more longevity. He just had a lot more longevity with with his career and everything. Because like you said, like he was playing hits that he was like the featured rapper, and then he was also playing like stuff that he was also like when he would like be brought on to do features for other rappers. Like when he did that verse he did for Sierra, that Sierra song, that definitely, because that's actually one of my favorite verses of any Luda track. So like I think that he was kind of going into it with a lot of it was advantage Luda from the beginning, just because he had a lot more longevity. Like there's some things like that there are some good tracks, of course, that Nelly played, but I feel like that the thing is Nelly peaked. I feel like he peaked a little bit too early with his career. He had Country Grammar, then he had Hot in Here, and after that, like it was one of those things where later on in his career, like he tried to come back, and he had a couple of impressive tracks, but yeah, overall, like Luda, man, he brought the hits. Like everything. Like somebody was saying on Twitter one time, like Luda was a man of the people. Like he played just about every single thing that that we wanted him to play. Whereas like Nelly was like, oh wow, like there's some stuff that maybe he didn't play. And on top of everything else, I don't think he played any of when he was with Saint Lunatics.
Nelly didn't play the country stuff.
Yeah, like when he would like collab with Tim McGraw and things like that.
He didn't play that.
All in my head, I think
about over and over again. You didn't play that, so I mean, but yeah,
that he didn't play any of that, because that was one of the things that lots of people, like when Nelly was like really hot, lots of people like that's one of the things that people gave him credit for, was the fact that he kind of like fused together country and rap the way we've seen a lot of Southern rappers do.
It's kind of like with with the way that Waka crossed over to EDM, it was something that people kind of admired, and so, and only Waka, Waka did it and got his money out there. It's like when Nelly did that, it was like Nelly goes out the country and he gets his money, and people respected it because that was Nelly's thing. It was something different, something that nobody else was doing and nobody else could really do. So yeah, man. It's disappointing he didn't pull it out, but I mean, hey, it is what it is. It was an entertaining night just to see those two back together. I don't know, it gave us, like you said, that nostalgic feeling for kids our age in their 20s and stuff like that. And yeah, man, but hey, that's pretty much it. You have anything else for the versus battle? You have any ideas for any versus battles you want to see in the future?
Oh man, like they're already going on, about potential ideas. I see somebody was talking about Snoop and Busta. I would like to see that. I think I would definitely like to see that, because I feel like I think that we kind of do need to spice things up a little bit. Let's do some East Coast, West Coast. Let's do some ATL Houston type deal. Like or ATL Chicago. I would definitely like to see that. Like somebody was saying Snoop and Busta. Somebody was.
Well, I'm gonna stop you right there. I don't know if Busta has.
Somebody was saying Weezy and T.I.
30 years. I don't know if Busta has 30 years of hits.
You got a point
Busta
there.
has that. Busta's been around for 30 years, but I don't know if he has 30 years of hits.
Not to the level of Snoop's hits.
Snoop
got hits, as we all know.
Exactly. I don't know who can match up with Snoop, honestly. Maybe like Jay-Z, but Jay-Z doesn't have the commercial success that Snoop has. I think Jay-Z, I kind of guess, would be kind of closer to him, but
Yeah.
Because you know, Snoop is someone who would be down to do this because he's so in the social media world and on his phone all the time. But
Yeah.
he's so far above everybody else who you know would be open to do this. I don't know. I still haven't thought of a good matchup for him.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what I was, that's kind of what I was thinking like. And then did you see the thing about how Akon said he wanted to challenge like Takashi on IG
Yeah,
Live?
that was way left field. I did not
That came out of
expect
left
that.
field.
And then when I saw that from Complex, I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's going on here, man?
Yeah, like like that. Yeah, that's kind of going somewhere. Like I think it's one of those things where okay, like a lot of these verses have been pretty entertaining, but Akon and Takashi, like somebody was saying like, oh, what you doing talking about going on doing an IG live battle? Like, ain't you supposed to be building up Africa? But yeah, it's kind of one of those things. I think like that's sort of proof that we need to get out of quarantine because I don't think anybody want to see Takashi on freaking IG Live or Versus or anything like
No,
that.
the thing is though, when you look at, I looked at last night, they were trying to get up to 500,000 the whole night. They can never
Yeah.
really get there because of Nelly's Wi-Fi probably had a large thing to do with that.
Uh-huh.
Takashi gets out and he breaks the record with over 2 million.
Mm.
Jill Scott and Erica Badu, they had like 700,000, maybe 800,000. They were approaching a million.
Uh-huh.
John P. Key and Hezekiah Walker, they got close to 100K for the gospel side of things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Probably everybody else probably had like 200K. I think Babyface and Teddy Riley had like 300, 400K. So
Yeah.
to think that are their numbers, and then Takashi gets 2 million. What does
Mm.
that say about us as consumers? What does that
Yeah.
say about the state of social media? But
We addicted
that's a whole nother
to
discussion for another day. I don't want to give the kid too much attention because that's how he's got here in the first place.
Yeah, that's true. Like what how J. Cole mentioned when he was rapping about him on a lot when he was on 21 with 21 Savage. And
Exactly, exactly.
what's so amazing though is that I think that on top of everything else with that, is it gonna be one of those things where we're gonna start remembering like the issues because there was also a lot of rain in St. Louis around the time. Is it one of those things where it's like they announce a versus battle and it's gonna be like, oh, we're gonna start checking the weather forecasts we're gonna start checking the weather forecast to make sure that we're not gonna have the issues that we had last time.
It's just funny because like with
And
artists that big, if they have a show, you're gonna have a big sound check, right?
true.
So why is there no? There needs to be a sound check, a Wi-Fi check. Luda had his stuff in gear. His picture was clear the entire night. His
Yeah, he came
song
prepared.
sounded very clean and loud and clear the entire night. He had his setup right. He changed clothes every now and then. You know what I'm saying? Luda just had it down pat. He had his stuff together. So it's
Yeah.
like,
Nelly was dancing for the most part.
yeah, no. Nelly was feeling
Hands-
it. He was
Mhm.
dancing to all the songs that people did not know. But it was just funny to see that. It was a great night, but
Yeah.
they definitely need to have a sound check, Wi-Fi check, all that because they know, they see how successful this franchise has become. Shout out to Swiss, shout out to Timbaland, shout out to Versus for getting this thing together, man. But
Oh yeah.
hey, Keem, I think we closing in there an hour.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything else you want to touch on real quick? I know we were talking about sports opening up. There was a golf tournament today.
Yeah.
Baseball's talking about coming back and everything. Just how you feeling about sports returning slowly but surely?
I think it's one of those things where we're sort of kind of like sports appeal. I feel like for the most part to our emotions, but I feel like it's something where it's sort of like listening to our hearts, versus listening to our brains. Because I think that for the most part, when it comes to sports returning, I think we all want sports to return for sure. Because of what it brings us, and because of what people probably was watching when they saw the golf relief and everything like that, and even the NASCAR. But I feel like the thing that that sort of gets me about sports returning slowly but surely is, and something that I think hasn't really been talked about all that much, is how do the players think of it? Because I know that they're talking a lot about Major League Baseball returning. I know that there's even an Associated Press article written by Doug Feinberg where he was talking to WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, and they were going over potential scenarios for the WNBA to return. One of the things that I know lots of people have been speculating on is the possibility that maybe they'll finish the NBA season and maybe do the entire WNBA season in Las Vegas. So, but I think that one of the things that hasn't really been talked about is what is the perspective of the players. Like, I know they want to get back on the court and everything, and they want to hoop. I know that, baseball players want to get back on the diamond again, but I think do they want to get back on, do they want to get back playing so soon? So I think that, over these next few weeks, what I hope we see more is a lot more perspective, from the players and just how they feel about this. Because I feel like we've been getting mostly the perspective of a lot of league commissioners and a lot of league executives. But I want to hear exactly, what do the players think about this? What do the coaches think of this? Do they think that it is, logistically feasible and even health-wise feasible to start playing again?
Yeah, man, for sure. And then I think it's also very interesting to see how the NBA superstars had that big call to, the front office and was like, we want to finish basketball. And it's like, it's kind of crazy seeing that, because it's like, you would think those guys above all, like, this whole thing really started because the NBA. Like,
Rudy
the
Gobert
shutdown happened because, exactly, Rudy Gobert got it. I don't think that the shutdown would be such a thing if Rudy Gobert didn't get it.
And then Donovan Mitchell.
Say, but yeah, because Tom Hanks, he got it, but Tom Hanks was in Australia.
Exactly.
So it's like the fact that it happened to Gobert in the United States made the United States take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
It's just ridiculous to think about, but that's what happened. So
right.
You would think out of all sports leagues, especially with Cat losing his mom, and, Dwight Howard losing, one of the mother of his children, you would think, as hard as COVID has hit the NBA family, that they will understand more than anybody else that, hey, let's take our time with this. But they're pressing, man. They're trying to get it done. I would be in favor of just doing next season like a lockout season, and, if you need to finish, this year in the fall, if everything opens back up to, enough for you to start back up in like August through September and then finish in October and then just everybody come back and, on Christmas, and maybe have the draft in November, do something like that. I don't know. But
yeah, because that's what George Karl said. George Karl even tweeted that he believes that they should just, cancel the rest of the season and just start back up in like October or November.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say cancel it necessarily just because you'll have that asterisk, but like I would say postpone it like super long, So even if you have to finish the playoffs in the last 15 games of the year, if you have to do that in August, September, October or whatnot, and then do it, I would say do that and then just make next season, shorter. Y'all been talking about making the season shorter anyway, but yeah, I think that would be an interesting way to do things. And, I don't know, man. This whole thing is got us all up in arms. The documentary was a nice distraction from that for 5 weeks, but now we're back to facing the realities of the pandemic.
Yeah, right. but like you said, I kind of wonder, like, other like you were saying earlier, like what they have, what are they going to have planned, in the future? Because, it's one of those things I look at, like all these sports channels are now going to start thinking of, ideas. Like ESPN is really starting to, promote like some of their other documentaries. Like there's a Lance Armstrong doc that's coming up. There's one about McGuire and Sosa and the 98 home run chase that's supposed to be coming up. Even WWE Network is promoting a multi-part documentary on the Undertaker. So there's so many ideas, that these sports channels are coming up. But yeah, as I was saying earlier, like just seeing the way that they ended The Last Dance, it sort of makes me want to just go back and watch all 10 episodes and just binge watch all of them.
Yeah, man. And then another thing that I was thinking about when we were talking about just kind of the current situation and like starting the seasons back up is the big three. Remember the big three was like, hey, we're going to take advantage of this and bring and have the quarantine thing. And then they quickly got stopped from that idea of like,
Right.
That ain't going to work. That ain't going to work. Big fella, sit down. So I don't know. It's just interesting, because that's what made me think of it when you brought up Las Vegas, having the NBA and WNBA season in Las Vegas. It's like having all the players kind of like quarantined, together and, playing basketball together and being exposed to nobody else, no fans or anything like that. I just wonder why they shut down the big three doing that.
But what's interesting is that I felt like what's interesting is MGM proposed a plan potentially for 4 sports to maybe resume their seasons in Vegas. They reached out to the NBA, the WNBA, MLS, and NHL. Out of those 4 sports that are best positioned, without question, the WNBA is best positioned to have their season entirely in Las Vegas, because it's not as many teams and it's not as many players and it's not as much personnel. So it's a lot feasible. And I think that's one of the things that probably their commissioner is thinking about, because, to essentially like move 20 or 30 or so teams to Vegas probably would be a lot, but it wouldn't be all that much, it wouldn't be, in my opinion, all that far-fetched if they were to do that for the W. The only question is, with the overseas players, how would that work? So we'll see what happens these next few weeks. But that was just something that sort of stuck out to me, is how are these other leagues positioned? Because it's sort of something that if they want to do it, the fact that these other leagues are so big, it kind of works against them.
So you're saying you could see the WNBA coming back before the NBA?
I could see if the NBA comes back, because they've been talking about all sorts of different scenarios, like maybe just playing having the playoffs, or maybe just having the finals. But I feel like that because of the fact that they wouldn't have to move as many players, it's not as many teams, and it's not as many games. And then in the MGM proposal that I read about somewhere, they said they were going to talk about like maybe converting like some of a lot of like the space around their convention center into basketball courts. I feel like for the WNBA, because of the fact that it's only 12 teams, I feel like to a certain extent it's doable. And plus they already have a team in Vegas. So it's doable more so than the WNBA, more so arguably than for the NBA.
I'll be very, very interested to see how that goes and everything like that.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. But like you said, we just have to sit and wait.
True. Exactly. And like you said, just, find, other ways to really occupy our time. And like you said, in the beginning, it was sort of, I think, like in March, and even to a certain extent in April, we was like, oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do? But we've sort of adapted to it now. And I think that when we eventually get out of this, once we get out of this for real, I feel like that it's not going to be all that much of a transition back into quote unquote normal life, because we've adapted so much to this that it's sort of become second nature now.
Exactly. It takes 90 days to develop a habit.
True. Exactly. And I think that that's definitely what's happened here. That's definitely, like I said, that's definitely what's going on. Because I just think that for the, like I said, for the most part, there are some of us, in fact, a lot of us that I think have been just thinking about the really, what's, I guess, good for the greater good. So, that's really a testament to just, what we are. But But yeah, like you said, we've gone for a pretty good hour. We might as well just go ahead and just wrap this up for now, and we will, of course, we will be back next week. So, have any parting words or promote your socials?
Oh, well, first, I'm just excited that we'll be able to get most of the gang back next week. Hopefully, just because we'll be able to record at a decent hour in that midnight and 1 a.m. Eastern time and stuff like that next week. But the doc, and that is the one good spot about this doc ending, is that we can now record at regular hours of the day. Yeah, man. RashadMilling.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Carter_the GOAT.
Gotcha. And of course, what I am, Akeem Balaam, Twitter, Gram, PrepGirlsHoops.com, and BeyondTheW.com now. So check those out and see y'all next week. We are at.
Yeah.
See ya.
Y'all must thought that I was gonna whisper the whole time.
Mistress, diamonds they wear like go fishing. Y'all don't want friends, I want Audis. I don't want cars, I want Rarries. I don't want